Dr. Derek Wolf from Goldsmith University and supporter of Peace in Kurdistan campaign. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. First of all, in Turkey, political prisoner situation, also isolation of Mr. Abdullah Ocalan, as well as HDP members are still being detained. Any warrants against Erdogan and AKP government is trying to be prison. Can you see a democratic picture of Turkey?
I think the democratic picture looks very, very grim because we know Öcalan has been isolated for so many years, and that makes it difficult to kind of proceed with a peace process. It seems like the Turkish government at the moment isn't serious about peace, they just want repression. And it's forgotten, I think, by a lot of people in Britain and British politicians that you have the HDP, a democratic political party that's been electorally successful, and that their members of parliament and their mayors have been wrongly accused of being terrorists and imprisoned. So, I think Turkey is in a very bad way, and a variety of communities are under threat. The government is very, very repressive. And it kind of strikes me as obscene that British prime ministers and British leaders want to increase trade and military links with Turkey. And these conflicts can only be overcome, as we've seen in Northern Ireland, South Africa, the north of Ireland, through a serious peace process. And that's something that the Turkish government really seem to have no interest in advancing.
Basically, the Turkish aggression is growing, and the concerns about that growing internationally as well. What do you think Turkey is trying to achieve with that aggressive intentions in Syria and Iraq border, as well as within the Turkey as well? There is an ethnic cleansing. In Afrin there have been attacks to civilians as well. So, what is Turkey trying to achieve with that aggression?
I think sadly, Turkey just wants to wipe out the Kurdish people, and that any expression of kind of Kurdish autonomy and Kurdish freedom is heavily repressed. And, in Britain, there's coverage of what's been happening in Syria, but it's almost completely forgotten that you had Afrin, which was really a kind of beacon of, kind of peace and prosperity and cooperation in the region. And that was invaded, has been wiped out by Turkey. So all they're trying to achieve is the most brutal kind of repression. And that ultimately isn't going to work. But, in Britain, what we need to be saying is the British government should be opposing this. British firms should not be having military cooperation with Turkey. It's the most kind of destructive attack on, international sovereignty and human rights. And yet this is seen as a sort of export opportunity by Boris Johnson's government, as far as I can see.
Do you think governments need to put more pressure on Turkey about freeing Öcalan, as he's a key name to peace in Middle East and many conflicts in the world as well?
Yeah, he's the Nelson Mandela of the Kurdish people, and to get meaningful peace in South Africa, Nelson Mandela was released. Öcalan has been somebody who's been saying peace is the way, that you cannot ultimately achieve, what you need unless there is peace and cooperation. So while he's in isolation, it's very difficult to see the peace process going forward. And without the peace process going forward, there's going to be continual violence and repression, which is destructive of, everybody in the region.
Do you think Turkey needs to be removed from NATO as a NATO's second largest army? We have been witness that Turkey is supporting ISIS also still sending troops to Libya, where the people who changed their uniforms from Free Syrian Army jihadists to Libya now, to Turkish army uniforms. So, what would you like to comment about that? Do you think governments need to bring that Turkey needs to be removed from NATO to their agenda?
Yeah, I mean, I can't talk for NATO, and I'm not especially a supporter of NATO, but yes, it seems absurd that NATO, on its own terms, is said to be a kind of defensive alliance, and you have the second largest army, from Turkey involved in NATO, and they're certainly not, adhering to what NATO would say it's about. There's been, as we've seen, a lot of Turkish support for jihadists, destabilization of the region. Again, it's, I think, off the agenda quite a bit in Britain, but you have the brutal civil war in Libya, and they're supporting a dictatorial figure in that. So, this just seems to be absurd that NATO has an enemy of NATO within the NATO alliance. And again, this is something which is not really being picked up by the British media. It's not part of the debate, and we need to kind of make it part of the debate, because Turkey is making all of us less safe right across Europe and the Middle East.
I would like to hear your comments about arm trades to Turkey, arms sales, also this kind of international support to Turkey from the Western governments. Do you think that needs to be come to the end somehow? Because Turkey is growing in a different way for some professors and some academics, that is getting more aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, Turkey seems to be, the present Turkish government seems to be becoming more aggressive and more destructive. I'm very conscious of Anna Campbell, who went from Britain to go and fight against ISIS in Syria, a very brave woman, and she was martyred by Turkish forces using military equipment that had come partly from Bristol, where she lived. And that just seems such a kind of horrible example, but there are so many other examples. We've been very much told that there's been this conflict. ISIS have been a hugely destructive force. British people have bravely volunteered and gone to Syria to fight against the so-called Islamic State. And then, to find people like Anna Campbell killed by the Turkish state, with military equipment that's come from Britain. That everybody should be shouting about that. So we certainly need to end the arms trade with Turkey.
So you have been with Peace in Kurdistan campaign nearly last 10 years now.
Yeah.
So what else needs to be get done for peace in Kurdistan, as well as freedom for Öcalan? As we know, the freedom for Öcalan means peace in Middle East and peace in Kurdistan as well. But what else needs to be get done from your point of view?
I mean, I think those of us involved in Peace in Kurdistan, and of course there's Jeremy Corbyn, he's got a bit more time now, he could put some more energy in. What we really need to be saying is not just the terrible things that are happening with Turkey, but the positive example of the Kurdish people in Rojava and across the region, and what the Kurdish people have achieved with democratic confederalism, ecological work, peace building, is something that we need in Britain, and we need in the USA, and we need in Canada, and we need Angola, and we need everywhere around the world. So what we've got to be doing is working harder, which isn't why it's nice to take part in a discussion like this, spreading the word more, using social media, demonstrating, and really letting people know what's happening. And as you say, the kind of contradictions between what the British government will say and what NATO will say, and the very destructive role of the Turkish government at the moment.
Do you really think the Öcalan's ideas are alternative for capitalism today?
Yeah, I think they provide an alternative to capitalism, because if we look at capitalism, capitalism isn't saving people from the coronavirus. You need an alternative economic and social system, and he's articulated that very effectively. And the idea of, you know, the collective, the commons, the cooperation, you know, these kind of ideas that he's articulated really provide a kind of revolutionary alternative in the 21st century. You know, we kind of think of what's happening in Vietnam and national liberation movements and Palestine and so on. And what he does is to bring a lot of new strategic thinking, and, you know, a vision for how humanity could maybe live with each other, different communities, and live in a way which is more cooperative and less destructive of nature. So absolutely. And, you know, climate change we see, we have the coronavirus, you know, we have an economic and social system that doesn't work well. And he's got, you know, a very, very important contribution to constructing an alternative.
Dr. Derek Wall from Goldsmith University, thank you very much for joining us today. Thanks for supporting our channel.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be with you.